Hey, my name is Yura, and today I want to share with you a few thoughts on how to paint a cityscape from a reference. I'll tell you how and why I changed some things in my references to fit my design. I remember myself trying to figure out why this or that master made this or that particular decision while I actually saw the reference and the painting was quite different from it. I hope you'll find my advice useful and let's jump right into it. Firstly, we have to know what is our subject, and for that I like drawing a couple of sketches. But in this particular case, I had already sketched this street before, although during late fall and nighttime while my friends were having a couple of drinks in a nearby bar, but I knew exactly what my subject is, and that is this beautiful building in front of us in the end of this street. That's the Church of St. Eucharist in Lviv. So because I knew I wanted to paint this beautiful building as a subject, I actually made only one sketch. Otherwise, I would have a few sketches to figure out maybe some positioning, maybe even figure out what is my subject. So that's a common thing too. And here's another advice to avoid these kind of situations when you don't actually understand what is your subject. You have to ask yourself, what was the first thing, the first impression that made you stop in the middle of the street, take a picture, think of it as a reference. You have to ask yourself what caught your eye, what is the point of interest, and that will help you with your sketch and with your work. Once you've figured out what is the subject of your painting, the main point of interest, you can start building up to it. You can start thinking about things like lines, curves, like the contrast of dark and light, the combination of colors, contrast, complementary colors that will lead the eye to the point of interest or help you create some atmosphere. And here, for the purpose of creating atmosphere, I actually changed a couple of things even in my sketch. I decided that I don't want the dome of the church to stick out just like that in the reference photo. So I made the roof of the building to the left a little higher. And that was to sort of shift the overall feeling of the street, to make it a little cozier, a little narrower for the viewer. And this is the next thing I think about when I paint cityscapes. I think about what feelings, what emotions the scene made me feel when I first saw it. And this time in this street, I felt really cozy. I felt all the peculiarities of this street, like these little lamps and that basement. I wanted to have a cup of tea in one of those cafes and look at that church for some time. I wanted to stay there for a while and enjoy the coolness of the shadow. All these thoughts made me think of ways how I can put these feelings into my painting. And so I decided to make it feel a little cozier by extending the height of the buildings on the left. I decided to replicate that desire to stay in shadow by actually increasing the shadow area. So I'll have a line of shadow on the buildings on the left, and that also will drive the eye of the viewer to the tower of the church. And as for cafes and a cup of tea, I decided I'll have those umbrellas all red and leading into the tower of the church. And I also right away knew that I want to have some of that red color blend down into the floor, so to create some warm feeling and the desire to stay there. And the last decision was more of a compositional one. I decided to separate this tower in front of us from the rest of the building of the church and give it some light on the right plane so that the tower would be sort of highlighted from that side, and the part of the building that is not the tower would be closer in tone to the building on the right. And I decided to leave the road in front of the church in daylight, so that the tower would be sort of surrounded by light areas. And that is pretty much it about the thinking process of the composition and changing things that you see to the things that you actually want in your painting. Now, to recap main points, the first thing is crucial for the painting and for the whole process is you have to know, and I suggest even putting it in words, not just feel it, at least for the beginning stage of your art career and art journey. Actually tell yourself what is the subject of your painting or a sketch or a drawing, because even when drawing portraits there is a way to know your subject. Sometimes the angle of the face is quite interesting, sometimes a nose bridge or the eyes or a look that person gives or a smirk, that's your subject. And the same sort of differentiation is necessary for street scenes, for cityscapes. It is always buildings, it's always some roads, some streets, but you can find something particular, you can distinguish something particular. And if that was what caught your attention, if that was what actually dragged you into that visual experience, then that's your subject. For me, sometimes it's buildings, sometimes it's as simple as just the play of light on the building, this line that separates light from the shadow. Sometimes, recently, I painted a painting from Prague, and what caught my eye was a very peculiar reflection of a warm color building on a cool color side of white building, and that created a really interesting effect, and that was all I wanted to show the viewer. So firstly, know what you're painting, and secondly, I try to add some feeling to it, something that I felt about that scene. In this case, it was this really cozy feeling and the desire to stay there for a while, so that's why I had to have that cafe there. I changed it a little bit, but it was all according to the feeling I had. And I hope you liked it. And if you'd like to hear the complete explanation of the painting process for this painting and other paintings on this YouTube channel, become my Patreon. I'm in the process of making complete tutorials for all my paintings on this YouTube channel, and those videos are coming to my Patreon page soon. With just a little help, you'll be able to paint better and enjoy the process. And this is why you are amazing. Have fun! you.